Okay, and we're back with another tier list. This is a Jake Paul opponent tier list. Now, Jake Paul, of course, is a boxer whose career has been made up of guys who largely were either far removed from their primes or even in their primes weren't that good of boxers anyway. So we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the rankings. Of course, at the top we've got S tier, A tier, B, C, D, and then F. And we're going to go across the line here, and you can see the names and the faces of the guys that we've got lined up. So let's get into it. First of all, we've got Anisin Gibb. Now, this guy, particularly when he fought Jake Paul, was a very bad boxer. But also, Jake Paul was a very bad boxer at this time too. So it does make you think. Of course, this is both guys' first fight, and they were right at the start of their career. Jake Paul's obviously gone on to improve quite significantly since this. Anything Gibb has gone on to improve quite significantly, but still, even now, isn't that amazing. He's beaten other influencers, and fair play to him. But of course, when you're comparing him to Jake Paul is probably the best influencer boxer we've had. And Anising Gibb is not that. So I'm gonna put Anising Gibb at D. Honestly, I could put him in F tier because he was so bad at that point. But he has gone on to improve a bit, so I'm going to put him in D tier because there are guys who truly are even worse than Anising Gibb. And next is Nate Robinson, and Nate Robinson was worse than Anising Gibb and got battered by Jake Paul, got absolutely sent to the Shadow Realm. And, I guess some people still sort of, put some respect on his name for what he done in basketball, but yeah, you're absolutely cooked going out like that against Jake Paul. Again, a Jake Paul who at that point was still very early in his career. And you went out like that is crazy, right? Again, same thing could be said for Ben Askren because Ben Askren doesn't even have an excuse because he was actually an MMA fighter. Of course, he wasn't a striker by any sense of the by any stretch of the imagination. Like this guy would have MMA matches and not even throw a punch. This guy was so grappling heavy, right? But again, got absolutely sparked out by Jake Paul, and there you go. Got absolutely embarrassed. You get Tyron Woodley. Now you get these guys, and you're going to see a number of these guys who are like this, where a prime Tyron Woodley was quick, explosive, had so much power in that right hand. But again, is a lot smaller than Jake Paul. Tyron Woodley spent his career at 170, right? Jake Paul would go on to fight Mike Tyson at 227. So these guys aren't used to fighting at the same sort of weights. It would be like Tyron Woodley fighting a light heavyweight. In which case, what happened in that second fight is what you would expect to happen, and he got knocked out. That being said, the first fight was quite competitive. The second fight was, an absolute embarrassment for Tyron Woodley, if we're being honest, and been made memes out of because it was such a brutal knockout. And again, you're going to see some themes here where Jake Paul has some brutal knockout wins. Brutally knocked out Nate Robinson, brutally knocked out Ben Askren, and brutally knocked out Tyron Woodley. Again, Tyron Woodley is better than all of these guys here, so I have to put Tyron Woodley in C tier. Then Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva, you could arguably say, other than Tommy Fury, Anderson Silva gave Jake Paul his toughest fight. And this is an Anderson Silva again, like these other guys, far removed from his prime. That was very, very old, a ton of miles on the clock, had been knocked out multiple times by this point, dropped multiple times. But again, with Anderson, it never felt like it was a question of his talent or his ability. It was never a question of that. It was a question of how far removed from his prime is. Has he got the chin? Has he got the speed? Has he got the reflexes? Because we know his IQ's there. So Anderson has to go A tier, in my opinion. He has to go A tier. Had a very close fight. I think at the end of that fight, Jake Paul might have dropped Anderson, and I remember at the time there was some people saying, "Oh, it's got to be fixed," but I don't think it was. It looked kind of funny at the time, but I don't think that fight was fixed at all. Especially not him getting dropped like that was fixed. But Anderson goes in the A tier, and of course one of the all-time goats in MMA, and Tyron Woodley in his own respect, one of the welterweight goats too. Then you've got Tommy Fury, who beat Jake Paul, so he's got to go S tier. He beat him. He done it. It was competitive. Let's be honest, it was a competitive fight. I did remember finishing that fight thinking, yeah, Tommy Fury's probably won that, but it was competitive, and Jake Paul shouldn't, hang his head in shame in that. I mean, he somewhat should because Tommy Fury's not that good, and he did lose to him, but it's not like he got smoked by Tommy Fury. And I would even say going on after that fight, Jake Paul has improved a lot more than Tommy Fury has improved from that point. And I think if they did rematch, that result would be different. Those two rematch at cruiserweight, I think the result would be different. I think Jake Paul could do enough to get a win there. In a 8 round, 10 round fight, I don't think either of these guys should really be going 12 rounds. I don't think they're quite built for it. Even we saw against Chavez, Chavez Jr. that he would tire out towards the end. But anyway, yeah. Tommy Fury's S tier, and Tommy Fury. This is the only good win on Tommy Fury's career as well on his resume. KSI win was because KSI is pretty awful, but beat KSI, and he's fought nobody else good. Literally, Jake Paul is the best win on Tommy Fury's resume. Then you've got Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz is obviously he's bigger than Tyron Woodley, but again, is a guy who is a welterweight. He's 170 pounds. And again, even at that point, was far removed from his prime. Was very slow, very hittable, extremely sluggish in there. And Jake Paul was just far, far more athletic than him. So yeah, Nate Diaz goes C tier, and again, another guy, like I said, far removed from his prime. And this dude, this black dude, I think this is Andre August who he fought. Now, to be fair to Andre August, he actually is a pro boxer and has had fights, not beat anyone good. Again, similar to Tommy Fury in that sense, where the only name on his resume that you'd recognise would be Jake Paul, and in this case, Jake Paul actually beat him. I want to say this dude was like 9-1 or 10-1 going into that fight, so not an awful record by any means, but and to be fair, like I said, was a pro boxer, but Jake Paul dealt with him and swiftly moved on. This dude, I've got no idea who this dude is. I got no idea, so I'm gonna put him F tier. Yeah, I don't know who that is at all. Mike Perry, probably have to put Mike Perry C tier again because he's definitely the same sort of level as these sorts of guys. To be fair, Mike Perry, yeah, he did about as bad as these guys did as well. Where again, another Mike Perry's another welterweight, far removed from his prime. Loads of miles on the clock, been through wars, been knocked out, been dropped, very hittable, and Jake Paul did exactly that to his face. Hit it. Then you got Mike Tyson, who, as tough as this is going to be to see him go down here, he probably has to go D tier because he didn't get brutally knocked out like Ben Askren and Nate Robinson and even Tyron Woodley, but he was so bad in there. So bad, so slow, sloppy. It was exactly everything I expected to see Mike Tyson, how he looked in that fight. It is how he looked, right? He's not going to be capable of putting combos together. He's not going to be capable of moving in there. He's not going to be able to get a knockout in there. He's not defensively going to be able to slip all those punches the way he used to be able to. He's a lot slower, older, and a lot more sluggish, and his punches come from a mile away, right? And they've lost all their power because Tyson's an old man who's not got as much core strength, not got as much hip strength as what he once had. So his punches have got very little in them. Okay? So he had really had no path to victory against Jake Paul because he's not got the power to stop him. And he's too small, old, and at this point weak to get inside and actually do anything. And even if he couldn't do it for the duration of the fight. And landing one good combo on Jake Paul isn't going to be enough to get him out of there against a Mike Tyson, an old Mike Tyson, right? So Mike Tyson has to go D tier. As hard as it is, and of course, I don't even need to say it, but if it was prime Mike Tyson, of course he's going S tier, but it's not. It was a Mike Tyson who was pushing 60 and had been retired for damn near 20 years, right? Then you got Chavez Jr. Now, Chavez Jr., going to put him in B tier, right? Because he didn't get brutally knocked out. He did get outboxed, which was kind of crazy to see because Chavez Jr. is a guy who's been boxing for years. But again, another one of these guys where dedication to the sport was always questioned with Chavez Jr. and how much did he actually love boxing. And in this fight, you could see he was doing it for the payday. And to be fair to Chavez Jr., once it was, the 10th, 11th, 12th round, he started to lock in a bit more. He started to show a bit of fire there, but by that time, the fight's done. There's no point showing fight in round 11, round 12 when you've lost the previous 10 rounds, the previous 7, 8, 9 rounds. What's the point? Fight's done. You ain't knocking this dude out, so fight's done. And is, to be honest, the best name on Jake Paul's resume, if we're being honest, the best win on his resume is Chavez Jr. And then you get Gervonta Davis, who has to go S tier, which is crazy. But Gervonta Davis is the multiple-time world champion, undefeated world champion at lightweight, knocks out, by far one of the biggest punchers at lightweight. Lightweight's 135 pounds, and the weight limit for his fight against Jake Paul is 195 pounds, I believe, or 190 pounds. In which case, there will likely be, on fight night, there will likely be a near 100-pound weight difference when these two fight. Because Jake Paul can weigh in at 190. As far as I know, there's no rehydration clause. But if there is, then that will limit it. But we know Jake Paul against Mike Tyson came in at 227. So it's safe to say he walks around that sort of weight. Even if he can get from 190 to 215, 205. Gervonta Davis weighed in his last fight at 133 pounds. He's not even weighing in at the 135-pound limit. I struggled to see Gervonta Davis weighing in at more than 150 pounds, more than 145 pounds. I really struggle. And like I said, maybe it's not a 100-pound weight difference, but it'll likely be a good 60, 70-pound weight difference on the night, which is crazy. That being said, like I said, Gervonta Davis is an undefeated world champion, by far one of the biggest punchers at those weight divisions, and has knocked out a lot of guys. And in terms of boxing ability, he will be the best guy he's fought. In terms of elusiveness and knowing their boxing fundamentals, Gervonta Davis is well and above all of these guys, including Tommy Fury. Gervonta Davis has far better boxing fundamentals than Tommy Fury. But yeah, it's crazy. Gervonta Davis and Tommy Fury in the S tier, crazy. But yeah, like I said, I struggled to see any paths to victory for both guys. But if we're being honest, it's an exhibition. It'll probably just be one of these boring old, these boring old exhibitions where a gentleman agreement takes place and neither guy agrees to go for the knockout. You know what I mean? One of those ones where neither guy goes for the knockout and we're like, okay, we'll do this and we'll get in, we'll get out. Let's get paid and let's make sure neither guy takes too much damage here, right? So yeah, that's my Jake Paul tier list. S tier, we've got Tommy Fury and Gervonta Davis. A tier, we've got Anderson Silva. B tier, we've got Andre August and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. C tier, we've got Tyron Woodley, Nate Diaz, Mike Perry. Then D tier, we've got Aneeson Gibb and Mike Tyson. Then F tier, we've got Nate Robinson, Ben Askren, and then this other dude who I can't, for the life of me, I sort of remember his face now, but I don't know, I can't remember the dude's name. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of this tier list. Who would you have had where? Would you have put, Mike Tyson a bit higher? Would you have put Anderson a bit lower? Would you have put Gervonta a bit lower? I'd be curious to know what you guys think in the comments below. And yeah, another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.